Hi everyone! Today we're going to be making this very quick and easy clutch purse as part of our 4 Skein Challenge series. And if you're interested in the other projects in that series, please check the links in the description. And for this, I am working with 4 different strands of yarn. So of course you can use any scrap yarn that you have lying around, and it doesn't matter if it's the same size, weight, brand, or type, as long as you have 4 strands. For me, I'm working with the Re-Up Recycled Cotton and Polyester Blend yarn, and they're each size 4 medium weight yarn. And I am going to be using a size J or 5 3/4 of a millimeter crochet hook. And I am grabbing a safety pin, but you can use a scrap piece of yarn or a stitch marker if you would like to for this pattern. From here, we're going to grab 2 of our strands of yarn. So I'm just grabbing my 2 strands of that rust color, and we're going to attach this yarn to our crochet hook using a slip knot. And then we're going to create a long rope of chains. And it doesn't matter how many chains you place in this rope, you will be adding to this as you go. So I usually work about 100 chains at once. And once you've crocheted a pretty long chain rope, if you have an extra safety pin, you can slide it into this loop where your crochet hook is. But if you don't, you can just pull your loop out nice and long like this. And when the time comes that you need to add more chains, all you have to do is pull on your safety pin and insert your crochet hook in your little loop here. And then you can continue adding chains like normal. Go ahead and grab your 2 strands of the blue yarn, and we're just going to set those to the side for a moment. What we're going to do next is find our starting tail for our chain rope, and we're going to insert our crochet hook in the first chain of our chain rope right beside that slip knot. Next, grab your 2 strands of your blue colored yarn, and we are going to tie a magic circle with them. And you want to make sure that your chain stitch is still on your crochet hook. So you're going to drape your tail over your working yarn and then pinch that intersection. Then you're going to insert your crochet hook from the bottom up. And then I'm going to hold that intersection while I change my hand hold. From here, it helps if you hold onto your chain rope, and all you're going to do is yarn over and pull through your magic loop as well as that chain stitch. So now you should just have your blue yarn on your crochet hook. From here, we're going to separate our magic circle a little bit by pulling down on the bottom part of it. So what this should do is it should leave your magic circle, your tail for your magic circle, and your chain rope all up here at the top. And we are going to work over all of this for our next row. So you're going to place 8 single crochets inside your magic circle, again just working over all of that at the top there. And once you have your 8 single crochets in place, then you're just going to pull on your tail to tighten the gap in your magic circle, just like that. So we have a couple of notes here. The first is, from now on, we are going to be crocheting over our chain rope like this. You're also going to need to grab your stitch marker, safety pin, or scrap piece of yarn to mark the first stitch in each of our rows, because we're going to create a spiral pattern. So the pattern for our second row is going to be to place 2 single crochets in each stitch in our row, starting with this first single crochet here. And again, you will be working over your chain rope. And what I like to do is create my first 2 stitches and then mark the first of those stitches. So we're going to go ahead and just mark that first stitch after we placed our first 2 stitches. And then we're going to pick up with our pattern from here. So again, that's 2 single crochets in each stitch in the row for a total of 16 single crochets. And at the end of your row, you can remove your stitch marker. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first stitch and then 2 single crochets in our second stitch. And we're just going to alternate between placing 1 and 2 single crochets going around our row. And again, you do want to mark that first stitch of your row. And when you get to the end of your row, you should have a total of 24 single crochets. And the pattern for the next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 2 stitches, and then we're going to place 2 single crochets in our third stitch. And we're just going to repeat that pattern going around our row for a total of 32 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 3 stitches, and then we want to place 2 single crochets in our fourth stitch. And we're going to repeat that going around our row for a total of 40 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 4 stitches, and then we want to place 2 single crochets in our fifth. And we're going to repeat that going around our row for a total of 48 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 5 stitches, and then we're going to place 2 single crochets in our sixth. And we're going to repeat that going around our row, and when we get done, we should have a total of 56 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 6 stitches, and then we're going to place 2 single crochets in our seventh. And we're going to repeat that going around our row for a total of 64 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 7 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in our eighth. And we're going to repeat that going around our row for a total of 72 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 8 stitches, and then 2 single crochets in our ninth. And we're going to repeat that going around our row for a total of 80 single crochets. And that was our last row of increasing. So from here, we're going to create the handle. And so what I am going to do is remove my stitch marker and count out my first 20 stitches. And we're going to mark that 20th stitch with our stitch marker. From here, we're going to work single crochets over our chain rope here. So basically, we're just going to work around it like this, and we're going to place 30 single crochets over our chain rope. Once you have your 30 single crochets, your pattern should look something like this. So now we're just going to join in that same stitch where we placed our stitch marker with a single crochet. So sometimes I like to include it while the stitch marker is in place so that I don't accidentally miss the stitch. Once you've joined your handle to your base, then you're just going to place one single crochet in each stitch in your row until you get back to the start of your handle right here. And remember to continue working over that chain rope. And once you make it back to the start of your handle, then all we're going to do is place one single crochet in each stitch in our row, going all the way around and up and over our handle. And we want to repeat this for 3 rows. And once you've worked these 3 rows around your clutch and over your handle, your pattern should look something like this. From here, I want you to end your last row somewhere near the start of your handle here. Then I want you to count out 31 stitches like this and mark your 31st stitch. And then take a quick look. You want the stitch that you marked in your last single crochet to sort of be even on your handles. So what I mean is you don't want the last single crochet to be up here and the stitch you marked to be down here. You want to try to get these as even as you can on either side. From here, I want you to place 19 single crochets over your chain rope. And once you have your 19 single crochets over your chain rope, go ahead and pull your handle forward like this. You don't want to accidentally crisscross these. Then working in that stitch that you marked, we're going to place a single crochet there. Again, working over our chain rope. And we're going to go ahead and remove this stitch marker and place it in that stitch that we just created. And this is going to be the new start of our row. And I want you to go ahead and take a second and count the number of stitches in this new row. So I'm talking about right here, going all the way around and in your new chain rope row right here. The total number of stitches here should be 80. We're going to start to decrease back down to form the other side of our clutch. So I am just turning my clutch like this so that it's shaped correctly. So now that you've turned this up, your clutch should look something like this. So the pattern for our first row of decreasing is to place one single crochet in our first 8 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet together our 9th and our 10th stitch. So again, we have already placed that first single crochet and marked it. So go ahead and place one single crochet in those next 7 stitches, and then I will show you how to single crochet 2 together. And once you have your first 8 single crochets, then what we're going to do is single crochet together our next 2 stitches. So insert your crochet hook in that 9th stitch and yarn over and pull up through. Then insert your crochet hook in that 10th stitch and yarn over and pull up through again. So you should have 3 loops on your crochet hook. And we're just going to yarn over and drop all 3 loops. So from here, we're just going to repeat that pattern going around our row for a total of 72 single crochets. And I just wanted to remind you to make sure you're working in your new row, not your handle. And the pattern for our next row is to place one single crochet in our first 7 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet 2 together in our 8th and our 9th stitch. And we're just going to repeat that going around our row for a total of 64 single crochets. And you are going to want to mark the first stitch of your row, just like we were doing on our increasing side. And the pattern for our next row is to place one single crochet in our first 6 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet together our 7th and our 8th stitch. And we're going to repeat that going around our row for a total of 56 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 5 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet together our 6th and our 7th stitch. And we're going to repeat that going around our row, and we should have a total of 48 single crochets when we're done. And for our next row, we're going to place 1 single crochet in our first 4 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet together our 5th and our 6th. And we're going to repeat that going around our row for a total of 40 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 3 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet together our 4th and our 5th stitch. And we're going to repeat that going around our row for a total of 32 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first 2 stitches, and then we're going to single crochet together our 3rd and our 4th stitch. And we want to repeat that going around our row for a total of 24 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is to place 1 single crochet in our first stitch, and then we're going to single crochet together our 2nd and our 3rd stitch. And we want to repeat that going around our row for a total of 16 single crochets. And the pattern for our next row is just to single crochet 2 stitches together going all the way around. And you should have a total of 8 single crochets when you're done. And at the end of that row, you should just have a small little hole to work with. So what I want you to do next is just remove your chain stitches until only one little loop remains sticking out. Then we're going to slide our crochet hook in that little loop. And what we're going to do is go ahead and cut and tie off both of our strands of yarn here. I'm going to leave a little bit more length in the blue strand than I am in this rust colored strand. From here, working with all 4 strands of yarn, you're going to yarn over and pull through all the loops on your crochet hook, dropping both colors. And we are going to draw both of these tails to the inside of our clutch and then turn it inside out. And we're going to set that rust colored tail to the side, and then we're going to weave our blue tail in and out of our last row of stitches. And once you're done weaving your tail, then I want you to pull it really, really tight to close that little gap in your circle like this. Then we're going to tie it to our rust colored tail a few times. And before we turn this right side out, I do recommend hiding both sets of tails while it's inside out. And after turning your bag right side out, it should look something like this.